Great, thank you, Wendy. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the council briefing of the 10th of October 2023. Welcome council members and staff. We currently don't have any community members present in the chamber, but they may yet arrive. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we meet on the lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and pay respects to elders past and present. In terms of apologies, members on leave of absence, we do have some apologies this evening. We have apologies from Councillor Suzanne Warner, Councillor Ross Iopolo, Councillor Dan Loden, and just noting that Councillor Ashley Wallace is not yet present. Councillor Wallace is also an apology this evening. We have 5 members, and whilst we don't need a quorum for a briefing, that does present a quorum. Expecting a relatively short meeting tonight, given that we are in caretaker and we do have a much reduced agenda. But council members, as always, please ask your questions and feel free to ask as many as you wish. In terms of public question time, we don't have any members of the public gallery present, so I won't then open public question time. And in terms of receiving public statements, we did not receive any written statements today. So I will then go to the CEO for declarations of interest.
Through you, Mayor Cole, the one declaration of interest is from yourself, a financial interest in relation to item 5.2, which is the amendment to the Municipal Heritage Inventory, 40 Guildford Road, Mount Lawley. The extent of the interest being that the land is owned by the WAPC, and noting that you are a paid commission member and also sit on the Executive Finance and Property Committee that deals with WAPC property matters. Mayor Cole is not seeking approval to participate in the debate, nor remain in the chambers, nor vote on the matter. That's all.
Thank you. So Deputy Mayor, if you could please fill in for that item. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll go through the items then to see whether council members have any questions. The first item is 5.1, 54 Lincoln Street, Highgate, proposed alterations and additions to a single house. Are there any questions on this item? Hello, Manager. I just had one question. Just in relation to the changes that were made, and I understand they haven't been advertised because they have responded and reduced impact to those issues that were raised by through the public consultation. Has there been any feedback received by the team in relation to notifications being sent out to those that made submissions?
To you, Mayor Cole, we received one confirmation that they understood the changes that were subsequently made and were satisfied with those changes.
Thank you very much, Manager. Any other questions on this item? Okay, I'll step out for item 5.2.
Okay, so we're looking at item 5.2 on the agenda, amendment to the Municipal Heritage Inventory, 40 Guildford Road, Mount Lawley. Do you have any questions on this item? Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. Just wondering what powers are open to the department if this item isn't supported by council. What would be the actions that they might take?
Through you, Chair, the powers available to state government in terms of pursuing this further, they actually reached out to us initially and were contemplating lodging a development application, and that's how it was actually submitted. So this actually could be pursued through a development application to seek demolition of the heritage listed property, in which case any such proposal you'd still need to contemplate its removal from the municipal heritage inventory as well. So ultimately, in considering these two pathways from an orderly and proper planning perspective, it would be more appropriate to consider its listing in the inventory to deal with this matter, and then subsequently consider the actual works to remove the development.
Any further questions, Councillor Castle?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I suppose to follow on from that, if this was to follow through a process that the removal from the listing was refused and then a development application was sought and potentially refused, what are the levers or the actions that the city can take to keep it on the heritage listing, given the condition of the property and the MRWA road reserve that's in place?
Through you, Chair, in terms of the levers that could be pulled, there are no appeal rights for this request to be removed from the city's MHI, as far as the state government in terms of pursuing that. But if we're speculating, if we're referring to the development application, if that was to be pursued further and if that was to be refused, as you referred to, Councillor Castle, like with all applications, planning applications, that can be appealed to the State Administrative Tribunal, and it can go through that process. I'm not saying that that's something that they would do. That would be available to them to appeal the decision. As far as what the city can do and understanding the implication of the road widening, Main Roads WA have confirmed that that additional road widening that would affect this particular site has been authorised and will be pursued. What that means is that in subsequent steps, there will need to be a subdivision submitted with the state government to excise this portion of additional road widening that would be constructed, and then subsequently there would be a closing off with the MRS, so the Metropolitan Region Scheme, to basically designate this as the primary regional road reservation. So that would just be effectively an omnibus amendment. But that would be the process as intended by the applicant and the state government.
So ultimately, would that road widening process trump the MHI if it came to that?
Through your chair, would it trump the MHI? It's a relevant consideration, and I suppose this is why the state government isn't simply seeking to forge its way through this process and I suppose undertake those works in terms of road widening. It's acknowledged by the state government that that is a really important exercise in order to ensure that there is appropriate movement on that primary regional road, affects Guildford Road and East Parade. So that's important, it's necessary. But at the same time, they are seeking to cautiously work through the process, and the process says you need to deconstrain the site effectively by considering the heritage listing. So it's difficult to speculate in terms of what would trump what, because I'm not sure if it would even get to that point. We would need to better understand from the state government what they would intend to do if this was not supported by council.
Okay, and just lastly, more broadly, what powers does the city have to avoid situations like this where you have a property on the MHI that has been neglected so badly that the condition now would support its removal? It seems like I wouldn't say convenient, but it's a loophole to the requirements of the MHI that mean you can leave it for 17 years and eventually it should be removed. Are there fines or other actions that we could take in these sorts of situations?
Through you, Chair, I just wanted to clarify that removal from the MHI is not being supported and not being sought from the applicant. So not being supported by administration and not being sought by the applicant on the basis of its poor state. that is one avenue available under the city's policy setting to support removal from the MHI, but it is not the reason why they are seeking removal in this instance. From the city's administration's perspective, it is being supported because of the location of the building on the site, and that's a specific reason why council's policy would contemplate and support removal of particular dwellings from the MHI. So just to be clear, that's the reason why, and the location of the building on the site is the reason why administration is supporting its removal from the MHI, because of the road widening would effectively shave off the front of that dwelling, which is where the cultural heritage significance lies. In terms of enforcement, it's a really challenging one, I guess, from a heritage standpoint. One of the most effective ways to ensure that properties with heritage significance are kept up and maintained and conserved is really by ongoing use. And this property hasn't been used since post 2007, as I understand it. So that's a substantial amount of time. It's all boarded up and it will become derelict in time. So that's a really challenging situation, which is why the policy setting needs to be able to support adaptive reuse and encouraging enabling types of development so that people continue to use that space and it keeps up with the needs of the community. So in terms of enforcement, I mean, there's some powers and we've got an enforcement policy that allows us to pursue these types of matters. But again, that you'd have to pursue that in terms of gathering information and trying to work with the proponents to keep up properties. Difficult when there's nobody living in there.
So perhaps that's something that can be explored in the next review of that policy as to what, how we address situations like this. Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions? No. Okay, we'll ask Mayor Cole to return to the chamber.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We'll then move to item 5.3, advertising of proposed revocation of local planning policy number 7.4.9, encroachments over Crown lands. Any questions on this item? Can I just say I appreciated the format where the existing policy and the clauses of the other policies where that's covered was provided. I thought that was a very good way to do it and would recommend that for future revocation of policy. Okay, that concludes our lengthy strategy and development items for the evening. So we'll move to infrastructure and environment. We have one item that is 6.1, adoption of the Animal Amendment Local Law 2023. Any questions on this item? Yes, Councillor Alexander.
Sorry, but I looked at this about 5 times and I obviously couldn't find the spot that tells me what is going to change and what is actually happening with it. And I saw there was, I don't know, 14 or 15 opposed and 3 or 4 for it. But could someone just explain to me what the difference is going to be here, please?
Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, I can. When the local law was adopted, there was an inverted error in it, which meant that it went ultra vires to the CAT Act. And in summary, a local law can't have powers beyond that which the CAT Act allows. And so
that's the CAT Act of 2011.
Yes, and so the city had to correct that local law, which is this amendment. So it is actually within the bounds of the head of power. So it's simply an administrative change to bring it back in line. So many people, as you would have seen in the comments, would like stronger CAT controls, but the CAT Act doesn't provide that scope.
I got all that. Thanks very much.
Basically, it had some cat containment clause, which I think at the time I questioned why that even made it in there, because we discussed it. And that was in conflict with the Cat Act. So this is just dealing with that one thing. But, you know, the report could probably say that very clearly up front. It could perhaps be a little bit more clear that it's just that one issue that we're dealing with. Any other questions on this item?
I was just going to add one other.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
Probably not to do with this item, but I wanted to compliment one of the rangers, if I could, who we caught a feral cat in our house today. And he come and actually he's the same size as me. And he got down in a little manhole and under and whatnot, ended up catching the cat, which was a bit wild. But anyway, I want to compliment. James is his name.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Soon to be the
Above and beyond
Ranger
the Call of
Ranger of
Duty.
the Month, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first started at the City of Vincent, we did have Employee of the Month awards, and an employee would come out from the door and stand and receive a certificate. And James sounds like he would be very deserving.
He was.
I think it really highlights the nature of the work that our staff do, and how, there is risk involved. Cats have got incredibly sharp claws and carry disease when they're feral. So, it's very nice to hear. Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Okay, unless there are any further questions, we shall move to community and business services items. Item 7.1, financial statements as at the 31st of August 2023. Any questions? CFO, hello. I was going to ask you a question about the underspend, but I saw that a significant amount of that was the depreciation timing. So I sort of thought that covered off most of it. So yeah, thank you. All right, item 7.2, authorisation of expenditure for the period of August. Any questions? I had a couple of items of interest. I was interested in the Leederville Wi-Fi service. I know we've talked about this before. I just wondered if the city is able to have any data on people using the service, or is that a mystery? We just provide it and we're not able to see through the provider whether people are actually using it?
Through Mayor Cole, I'll check what intelligence we can gain from that service and provide
Thank
the answer in
you.
the briefing notes.
And the other query I had is in relation to YMCA community budget grant, $55,000. I just wanted to inquire as to whether the YMCA had acquitted their last year's community grant funding against the program delivery that they were required to provide.
Through Mayor Cole, yes, and I think the youth team just met recently to go through some of those deliverables in terms of what councils endorsed in the youth action plan, but we can provide some more information on those deliverables.
Yeah, and I think also in relation to COV related service was something that we would be interested to know. Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Item 7.3, investment report as at the 31st of August. Any questions? Okay. Item 7.4, advertising of amended policy, diversity, access and inclusion. Questions? Item 7.5, outcome of advertising and adoption of amendments to the customer service complaints management policy. Any questions? I just had a question on this one in relation to the use of language. In the definitions of vexatious complainant and unreasonable complaint, I thought that if you look at actually clause 6, I wondered whether there should actually be stronger alignment between the definitions and the language in clause 6. If I give an example, in clause 6, it talks about habitual or obsessive conduct, whereas in the definitions, it talks about bad behaviour. And I think that bad behaviour is probably not really a clarifying description in compared to something like habitual or obsessive conduct, which is already forms part of clause 6 and seems to be taken more more strongly aligned with the ombudsman's type of language.
Through you, Mayor Cole, we can just cross-check both those. There's two separate definitions for an unreasonable complainant and a vexatious complainant, and then clause 6 essentially brings those two together. in
Yes,
terms of
I'm
response.
aware.
So we
And
can
that-
check those definitions.
That doesn't change my question because
Okay.
I've registered all of that, but I think that between the language of the definition and the language of clause 6, with my preference being the language of clause 6, which is much more descriptive and I think easier for people to understand and comprehend, if that could be aligned, I think that would be clearer and better.
And just to clarify, the definition around someone who engages in bad behaviours, does that present as too subjective?
I think that's very subjective and it's
Yes, I
not really
understand.
clear. I think terminology around things like unreasonable demands on the organisation, habitual, repetitive or obsessive, those are the sorts of words that I think are clarifying in terms of expectations for, you know, what this is actually trying to delve into rather than bad behaviour.
I understand. We'll try to fine tune that and present it to the OCM next week.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Chief Executive Officer items 8.1, outcome of advertising and adoption of amendments to the city's advisory group's policy. It was a late item. I hope you've had an opportunity to read it. But basically that had gone out for advertising. We did not receive any submissions. So it's recommended to be approved as it was when we considered it for advertising. So any questions? Okay. And item 8.2, information bulletin. Any questions? I had one question in relation to council resolution of the 14th of the 9th, 2021. Manager for Development and Design, I wondered whether there'd been any recent advice from DPLH on when the SPC will consider the Leederville precinct structure plan.
To you, Mayor Cole, I'll confirm and include that in the briefing notes.
Thank you. The last update that I received was Q3. So we're sort of coming to the end of that. Any other questions on the information bulletin? Okay, well, that was the last item on the agenda this evening. So thank you all for your attendance. And if anyone has tuned in, thank you for joining us. I will declare the meeting closed at 6:23 p.m. Thank you.